What if everything you've been told about building a good life is wrong, not slightly off, completely backwards? The longest study on human happiness ever conducted tracked the same people for 85 years. What they found contradicts almost everything our culture teaches us to chase. Researchers followed people from their teenage years until they passed away. They interviewed their wives, their children. They scanned their brains and drew their blood. They watched careers rise and marriages fall. 2 generations of scientists dedicated their lives to one question: what actually makes a good life? After 85 years, they had their answer. It wasn't what anyone expected. Let me show you what they found. In 1938, researchers at Harvard started something that shouldn't have been possible. They recruited a group of college sophomores and began tracking their lives. Not for months, not for years, for decades. The study is still running today. Most research projects struggle to keep participants for a few weeks. People move, lose interest, stop returning calls. But this study held on. The same people, year after year, filling out questionnaires, sitting for interviews. They let scientists into the most private corners of their lives. The original researchers grew old and died, and new ones took their place. The participants graduated, got jobs, got married, had kids, had grandkids. Still, the study continued. Brain scans, blood pressure readings, questions about their marriages, their friendships, their regrets. They tracked everything that could be tracked. When the participants finally passed away, the researchers didn't stop. They interviewed the widows and talked to the children. They wanted the complete picture from youth to death for every single person. 85 years. The same humans, the same fundamental question driving all of it. What makes a life go well? Think about that time span for a moment. Most of what we know about human happiness comes from studies that last a few months, maybe a couple of years if we're lucky. This one spans nearly a century. It watched teenagers become elderly. It captured what actually happened, not what people remembered or predicted. They wanted to answer the question we all carry around. What should I be doing with my life? What actually matters when it's all over? Before we look at what the researchers found, think about what you'd predict. If you ask most people what leads to a good life, the answers are remarkably consistent. Money, success, achievement, fame if you're lucky. We're taught that if we work hard enough, climb high enough, accumulate enough, happiness will follow. Honestly, it makes sense. Security feels good. Status feels good. Having options feels good. Our entire culture is built around chasing these things. Promotions, raises, recognition, the corner office, the bigger house, the impressive title. The researchers expected to find something similar in the data. They started with all the obvious hypotheses. Maybe intelligence would predict flourishing. Maybe family wealth or genetic advantages would explain who thrived and who struggled. In the early days, they even measured skull shapes. I'm not kidding. They thought physical characteristics might reveal who was destined for a good life. They measured and cataloged and hypothesized, looking for the biological markers of future happiness. They assumed what we all assume, that the external stuff would matter most, that the winners in life would be the ones who accumulated the most, achieved the most, climbed the highest. For decades, they gathered data, terabytes of information about every measurable aspect of human existence. Then they started looking for patterns. What they found contradicted nearly everything they expected. The study didn't just follow Harvard students. That would have told us something, but only about a very narrow slice of humanity. Privileged kids at an elite university aren't exactly representative of normal life. So they added a second group: young men from Boston's poorest neighborhoods, kids from troubled families, tough circumstances, uncertain futures. The exact opposite end of the socioeconomic spectrum. Same researchers, same questions. Radically different starting points. This is what makes the findings so powerful. Whatever patterns emerged had to hold true across both groups. The Harvard kids with every advantage, and the inner city kids with almost none. One detail still surprises people. John F. Kennedy was part of the original Harvard cohort. A future president, filling out the same questionnaires as everyone else, answering questions about his relationships and his worries and his hopes. Just another data point in a sea of data points. As the study evolved, they expanded further. They brought in the wives, then the children, then the children's children. The dataset grew richer and more complex with each passing decade. The researchers acknowledge the study started with limitations, all men, mostly white, a product of its time. But as it continued, it grew, and the core questions remain constant across every expansion. What predicts a flourishing life? What separates those who thrive from those who merely survive? Two very different groups, decades of observation, and one finding that kept emerging from the noise. After controlling for everything, one factor dominated all others. Not career success, not wealth accumulation, not intelligence or education or social status. After 85 years of tracking every measurable variable, the single strongest predictor of a healthy, happy, long life was the quality of a person's relationships. Let that land for a moment. Researchers had access to every piece of data you could imagine: genetics, IQ scores, income levels, physical health markers, family background, career trajectories. When they ran the numbers, relationships eclipsed everything else. The people who invested in their connections, who prioritized their marriages and friendships and family bonds, were the ones who thrived. They lived longer, they stayed healthier, and reported higher levels of happiness across every stage of life. The people who optimized for achievement at the expense of relationships told a different story. Many reached the top of their fields, many accumulated impressive wealth, and many, by their own accounts, felt hollow. This isn't correlation we're talking about. The researchers controlled for everything we think matters. They isolated the variable and ran it against every confounding factor they could identify. Still, relationships predicted outcomes better than anything else. Good lives are built on good relationships. That's not a greeting card sentiment. That's 85 years of data tracking real humans from youth to death. But this is where it stops sounding like nice advice and starts sounding like a warning. Loneliness doesn't just feel bad, it kills. The mortality risk of chronic loneliness is roughly equivalent to smoking 15 cigarettes a day. It rivals alcoholism in its impact on health and lifespan. This isn't metaphor or exaggeration, it's what the data shows. Think about how we treat smoking. Warning labels, public health campaigns, social stigma. We understand that lighting up regularly will shorten your life, and we've built entire systems to discourage it. Now think about how we treat loneliness. We call it a mood, a phase, a personality trait. Some people are just loners, we tell ourselves. Some people prefer solitude. But the biology doesn't care what we call it. Chronic disconnection floods the body with cortisol. It triggers inflammation and suppresses immune function. The loneliest participants in the study showed accelerated cognitive decline. Their bodies broke down faster. Their minds followed. We've turned loneliness into a personal quirk, when the evidence suggests it's a public health crisis. The study tracked these patterns across decades. People who reported persistent loneliness in middle age showed dramatically worse outcomes by the time they reached old age. The decline wasn't just mental, it was physical, measurable, biological. Your body keeps score of your connections, or the lack of them. The part that made me uncomfortable comes next. Your relationship satisfaction at age 50 predicts your health at age 80 better than your cholesterol levels do. Sit with that for a second. We spend enormous energy tracking biological markers: cholesterol, blood pressure, blood sugar. We monitor and measure and medicate. According to the longest study ever conducted on human flourishing, how connected you feel to other people in midlife matters more. The researchers didn't expect this. They assumed biological factors would dominate long-term health outcomes: genetics, lifestyle, medical interventions, the hard science stuff. But the data kept pointing back to relationships. People in their 50s who reported warm, satisfying connections were healthier in their 80s than those who had better numbers on their lab work. Strong relationships buffered against mental decline. Happy marriages protected against the emotional toll of physical pain. The immune systems of connected people worked better. The inflammation markers of lonely people ran higher. It's as if the body can't distinguish between physical threats and social ones. Being isolated registers as danger, and the stress response never fully switches off. If you're under 50, you're making choices right now that will echo across decades. If you're over 50, this finding is either reassuring or alarming, depending on where you stand. Which raises an uncomfortable question about how most of us actually spend our time. The loneliest people in the study didn't look lonely. They looked busy: packed calendars, impressive achievements, the kind of schedules that signal importance. They were optimizing, hustling, producing. They were doing all the things our culture celebrates, and many of them were profoundly disconnected. Here's the trap. We've gotten very good at measuring certain things. Steps taken, hours worked, calories consumed, sleep cycles, screen time. We track and optimize the quantifiable aspects of life because we can see them, count them, improve them. When's the last time you tracked the quality of your connections? You know that thing where you cancel plans and feel immediate relief? Join our YouTube membership and get exclusive perks like early access to scripts, input on future topics about productivity, and connect with a like-minded community that gets it. Click join below and let's build your easier, more intentional life together. Like you just bought yourself an evening. Then, 3 days later, there's this low-grade guilt you can't quite name. The study suggests that transaction has a cost, a measurable one. Connection feels inefficient. Friendships require time that could go elsewhere. Relationships demand energy we could spend on something productive. But the data is clear. The people who treated relationships as optional, who let them slide in favor of more pressing priorities, paid a price. They didn't notice until the invoice came due decades later. We've built lives optimized for everything except the thing that matters most. But the study revealed something that surprised even the skeptics. This is where people push back. Not everyone is wired for constant socializing. Some of us are introverts. Some of us genuinely prefer solitude. Does this research just mean we're doomed? No. This might be the most reassuring finding in the entire study. Introverts with a small number of deep connections did just as well as extroverts with expansive social networks. The number of relationships didn't matter. The depth did. It's not about party attendance or social media followers or how many people show up to your birthday. It's about having people who would answer the phone at 2 in the morning if you needed them. People who actually know you, not just know of you. Quality over quantity. The study confirmed this across both cohorts, across every generation they tracked. You don't need to become someone you're not. You don't need to force yourself into social situations that drain you. You need to invest in the connections that matter, whatever that number happens to be for you. 3 close friends beat 50 acquaintances every time. A strong marriage outweighed an impressive professional network. Depth trumped breadth in every analysis. If you've been worried that this research is just one more way for extroverts to win at life, the data says otherwise. There's a finding that surprised everyone, including the introverts. Casual interactions matter almost as much as deep friendships. The brief exchange with the barista, the neighbor you wave to, the coworker you chat with in the elevator. These weak ties, as researchers call them, contributed to flourishing in ways that surprised everyone. It's not just about having a few close confidants. It's about being embedded in a web of connection, even when those connections feel superficial. The difference is what these 2 types of relationships provide. Deep friendships offer intimacy, a place to process trauma, share fears, be fully known. That's irreplaceable. But casual connections offer something else, a sense of belonging to a community, evidence that you exist in a social world, regular proof that you're part of something larger than your own thoughts. The epidemic we're facing isn't just about lacking deep friendships. It's about lacking any contact at all. Working from home, ordering delivery, streaming everything. You can go days without meaningful interaction with another human being, and that isolation accumulates. Community involvement emerged as a hidden longevity factor. The people who stayed connected to their neighborhoods, their churches, their social clubs, lived longer than isolated achievers. You don't need to overhaul your social life. You need to be present in the one you already have. Say yes sometimes, make eye contact, have the small conversation instead of avoiding it. So if relationships are the answer, what does that actually look like in practice? The researchers developed a concept that reframes everything. They call it social fitness. Think about physical fitness for a moment. You don't go to the gym once and declare yourself fit forever. Fitness is a practice. It requires consistent effort. Skip the gym for a few months and you lose what you built. Social fitness works the same way. Relationships aren't a destination you reach. They're a condition you maintain through ongoing investment. We've internalized this truth about our bodies. We understand that health requires maintenance. We schedule workouts, plan meals, track our progress, but we treat friendships like static achievements. I have friends, check, moving on. Then, We wonder why those friendships fade, why the people we were close to become strangers, why connection feels harder as we get older. The well-being research points to 5 dimensions: positive emotions, engagement, relationships, meaning, and accomplishment. Relationships sit at the center, influencing all the others. When your connections are strong, everything else gets easier. When they're weak, everything else suffers. You wouldn't skip the gym for years and expect to be strong. Why do we skip friends for months and expect to feel connected? Social fitness means treating relationships as what they are: essential infrastructure that requires regular maintenance. But how do you actually train this skill? Speaking of investing in what matters, I've partnered with Hair Buddy for this one. You know how we just talked about social fitness requiring consistent maintenance? Turns out a lot of things work that way, including something most guys completely neglect: their hair. We'll dial in our sleep, our workouts, our diets, but hair care? We're still grabbing random bottles and hoping for the best. It's the one area where guesswork somehow became the default. Hair Buddy fixes that. It starts with a quick hair check-in/analysis in the app: your hair type, your goals, what you're actually trying to achieve, and it builds you a personalized routine. No more confusion, no more trial and error that never really goes anywhere. It's like having a friend who genuinely understands this stuff, giving you a clear path forward. Simple interface, actionable steps, tailored specifically to you. The study showed us that small, consistent investments are the ones that compound over decades. Taking care of yourself is part of that equation. And when you understand what tends to work best for your hair, it stops being another thing you're figuring out and just becomes part of the routine. Download Hair Buddy using the link in the description and get your personalized hair routine today. There's a method. Researchers developed a framework for building emotional intelligence in relationships. They call it WISER, and it's more practical than it sounds. The W stands for watch. Pay attention to your emotional experiences. Notice when you feel connected and when you feel isolated. Most of us sleepwalk through our emotional lives, reacting without awareness. Watching is the foundation. The I stands for interpret. When emotions arise, interpret them without judgment. Feeling lonely doesn't make you pathetic. Feeling disconnected doesn't mean you're broken. The goal is understanding, not criticism. The S stands for select. Once you understand what you're feeling, select a helpful response. You have more agency than you think. You can choose to reach out instead of withdrawing. You can choose vulnerability over protection. The E stands for engage. Whatever response you select, engage in it fully. Half-hearted connection doesn't count. Presence matters. Being physically there while mentally elsewhere doesn't register as connection. The R stands for reflect. After engaging, reflect on what happened, what worked, what didn't. This isn't about self-criticism, it's about continuous improvement. The study participants who flourished often did some version of this naturally. They paid attention, they adjusted, they treated relationships as something worth getting better at. Wiser isn't just for crisis moments. It's a framework for daily interactions, a practice you can build like any other skill. Which brings us to the part that hit hardest. Researchers asked participants in their 80s a simple question: what do you regret? The answers were remarkably consistent, and they weren't what our culture would predict. Nobody said they wished they'd worked more. Nobody said they wished they'd made more money. Nobody said they wished they'd climbed higher, or accumulated more, or achieved greater status. The universal regret was about relationships. I wish I'd stayed in touch. I wish I'd spent more time with my kids. I wish I hadn't let that friendship drift. I wish I'd been more present with my spouse. Over and over, the same theme. People at the end of their lives looking back and realizing they'd invested in the wrong things. This isn't about guilt-tripping you. It's about pattern recognition. If you could interview your 80-year-old self right now, what would they tell you? What would they wish you'd prioritized? The deathbed isn't where you want this realization to land. The data is giving you an early warning, a preview of the regrets you haven't earned yet. Regret minimization is a strategy. What choices today would your future self thank you for? What relationships are you letting slide that you'll wish you hadn't? Not one person at the end of the study said they wished they'd spent more time at the office. Not one. But here's what makes this different from every other piece of advice you've heard. You've heard relationships matter before. This isn't new information on its surface. Connect with people, nurture your friendships, be present. It sounds like every commencement speech ever given. So why should this land any differently? Because this isn't opinion. It's not someone's personal philosophy or a guru's latest theory. This is 85 years of data tracking real people from youth to death. It's brain scans and blood work, and recorded interviews with hundreds of humans across their entire lifespans. The researchers controlled for everything: genetics, IQ, social class, family wealth, starting advantages, and early setbacks. They isolated the variable and ran it against every competing factor. Still, relationships dominated, not slightly, decisively. The biological mechanisms are documented. We understand now how loneliness triggers cortisol and inflammation. We can measure the immune differences between connected and isolated people. This isn't soft science anymore. So the question shifts. It's no longer about whether this is true. The evidence is overwhelming. The question is what you'll do about it. We're very good at knowing things and not acting on them. We know we should exercise. We know we should eat well. We know we should sleep more. Knowledge doesn't automatically become behavior. But maybe this hits different because it's not about adding something to your life. It's about finally prioritizing what was there all along. There's one more thing the study teaches us. The Harvard study of adult development is still running. Fourth generation of researchers now. The original participants have mostly passed away, but their children and grandchildren continue the work. Here's what I want you to understand. You're running your own version of this study. Every day you're generating data about what builds a good life. Your choices are the experiment. Your relationships are the variables. The findings are in 85 years of evidence pointing the same direction. The people who invested in connection thrived. The people who didn't, regardless of what else they accomplished, often struggled. So now what? You don't have to overhaul everything. This isn't about massive transformation. It's about tending. A text you've been meaning to send, a call you've been putting off, showing up for something you were going to skip. Small investments compound. The study showed that too. Relationships don't require grand gestures. They require consistency, regular deposits into the accounts that matter. One question to sit with. What would your 80-year-old self wish you'd done differently? The study participants answered that question for us. They wished they'd chosen connection over achievement, presence over productivity, people over accomplishments. The study took 85 years to figure this out. You don't have to. The longest research project on human happiness ever conducted gave us an answer. The question is whether you'll use it. And hey, if you like this video, don't forget to subscribe and hit that like button. Also, let me know your thoughts on what I just shared. Oh, and there's more. I've just started a Patreon to help support these videos and connect with you more directly. Check out the link in the description if you'd like to join.